And welcome to Coffee with Pastor John, a part of the MCC Briefing series. We're just a few minutes late. Had a computer crash just prior to the show. We scrambled and we are back up. Oh, technology is wonderful. We've been having a great week. We're back after our summer break in August, and we've got great shows lined up for you today. Today we have with us ANDRAE BRAUN, who is with Turner Valley YWAM, and we are so glad that he'll be joining us today. But we want you to know that our Facebook experiment for our live show did not work out. So we're sticking with YouTube, but you will notice that all our shows are being posted and rebroadcasted on our Facebook page as well for watching later. And many of you watch our show later on in the day, and that's great. And we want you to discover our library and the various ways you can do that and get the word out that we are there. So like I said, we have ANDRAE BRAUN with us from Turner Valley YWAM. Hello, ANDRAE. Are you with me? Is it working?
I am. Yes. Yes. No glitches on this side.
Fantastic. This is great. Everything's working now, and I'm glad to see that. So, hey, ANDRAE, it's good to have you on the show, and I just want to set you up a little bit so our viewers know who you are and what YWAM is and what that's all about. So, Millerville, excuse me 1 minute. Millerville is 20 minutes outside of Calgary in the beautiful ranch country of the high country, just in the foothills of Alberta before you get the Canadian Rockies. A lot of people coming from Calgary would know it. Doing the Cowboy Trail loop as they come down through Black Diamond, Turner Valley, and then they come back up through Bragg Creek and then back to Highway 1 and back into Calgary, and that's their wonderful trip. And as you do that, we're in Millerville, right in the midst of all that beautiful country you're driving through. And at the bottom end of the corner of that is Turner Valley. It's right in the corner there, Kananaskis country opening to it. And right in Turner Valley is where YWAM and ANDRAE is. What does YWAM stand for, ANDRAE?
YWAM stands for Youth with a Mission, and it was started almost 65 years ago by a couple named Lauren and Darlene Cunningham, and they had a heart to see young people championed and enter international missions, especially going to the least reached people of the world. And so they kind of started out with that vision, and there was a few things that sort of developed that helped really form what discipleship of these young people would be, and then how to send them out to the ends of the earth. And so now there are literally thousands of locations and ministries and campuses and communities, all that have been commissioned out of YWAM, or Youth with a Mission, that are really focused on sharing the gospel in the least reached places.
Wow. So what's the ages of these kids that are going out?
It's a bit of a, I'll say the predominant age, and like YWAM or Youth with a Mission, though it is Youth with a Mission, it's open to people of any age, really. So we do get people coming to us to do our programs that are of any age.
Really?
But mostly, yeah. In fact, we've had DTS, or Discipleship Training School. That's our first school, the Discipleship Training School. And we've had students in that class that have been, in their early 60s. So, John, we're looking forward to your application.
Oh, wow.
What I meant is early 50s. What I meant is early 50s,
Well, I passed that a while ago.
But really, I think in the heart of what Lauren and Darlene Cunningham had in their mind, there is a bit more of a focus, though, on those who are 18 and into their 20s, because really we want to bring those young people on and disciple them in their faith, and also see them especially reach out and do great things for God, and do them in faith and in the spirit of what Jesus tells us about his kingdom. So it is, I'll say yes, it is a bit more young people focused, But like I say, you go to any Youth with a Mission conference, and you will see that there are people of all ages that are there and serving God in
Yes.
missions in Youth with a Mission. Yeah, yeah.
I was I'm old enough. I remember when YWAM started up. So there you go. And been around a while. So YWAM is well known around the world. There are various branches of it, but not all YWAMs are the same, right? So, like Turner Valley YWAM is got its own flavor. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, like over the years, each location has a level of self-governance or autonomy, or we'll say freedom in the spirit to really follow what God has called each location to do. So there is some differences. Like maybe one location really feels like they're meant to be moving out and reaching out to maybe indigenous peoples in their province or their country, and then another location really feels like they have to be, or they should be moving out in a coffee shop ministry where they're reaching out to their town, and a lot of their resources are going towards that. YWAM Turner Valley here, we have a special focus on going overseas to the Shan people of Southeast Asia. And so often we're sending our outreach teams to that area of the world because we really want to reach out to the Shan people. And so that's we'll say, been set in motion by a vision that was put in this ministry even before I ever came here. So there's a long-standing, we'll say, prophetic tradition that's led us to reach out to the Shan people. But yeah, every ministry has a bit of their own story in where they're meant to fit in the missions movement that Jesus put out before us.
Wonderful. So that's one of the distinctives of the Turner Valley YWAM. Yeah. And if someone goes and checks out YWAM, you're going to find out there's all kinds of places and activities and training you can receive all around the world, I guess, basically. Definitely. And your focus tends to be on in that part of the world. So you're also... part of the components, I'm just trying to paint a picture for our viewers so they understand what YWAM is. Part of yours is not just to send people out, but you do training. So you have a school there, and you call that what?
Oh, okay. Well, we have a few schools, but the very first school, this is one thing that is pretty common across all of Youth of the Mission, and that's the Discipleship Training School. If you hear people who are in YWAM and they're throwing out lots of letters, it's really confusing. Believe it or not, YWAMers know it's confusing, and they still use all these letters.
I know, we all do. Yes.
But it is the first school is, we call it a DTS, so that's a Discipleship Training School. And that school has we call it a lecture phase. And there's so it's a training phase that's right at the beginning of that course. It's 3 months, and each week you're going to go through a topic that is pretty integral and most of the time very basic to the Christian faith. For example, you might talk about, for a week, talk about spiritual warfare and intercession. The next week you might talk about the cross and really the gospel and how to share the gospel and your understanding of it and giving it to others. And then in another week, the Father heart of God, or these very basic teachings in the Christian faith. And so you go through 10 weeks like that, and then at the end of that 10 weeks, we send the team of those students or participants overseas on an outreach. And that outreach is usually, for the Discipleship Training School anyways, it's usually about 2 months. And there we're trying to get these young people to stretch out and share their faith. So they'll be sharing their faith in word and deed. So they'll be sharing the gospel literally with others, but then also in deed, in that there would be service acts that we give overseas that are really supportive of some of the long-term ministries and missions works that are already there. And then there's also compassion or mercy ministry stuff. So maybe working with an orphanage or with and internally displaced people camp and working inside there, or distribution of food and resources. So it's broad in what you're doing out there, but you're really, the spirit of it is just going out with the gospel and making sure that it's holistic in terms of the expression of it, and that's in line with the New Testament. So yeah, lecture phase, 10 weeks of that, or 12 weeks of that, I'm sorry, and then you have an outreach phase. That is our first school, the discipleship training school. Afterwards, if you'd like, we actually have, YWAM has many other, we call them secondary schools, so just schools you can do after that train you up and disciple you. The one that we have here that's one of the most common schools in youth and mission is called School of Biblical Studies. And so in the School of Biblical Studies, someone who's done a DTS or discipleship training school is led through the Bible to study it inductively, going through each book and studying it inductively, similar to what Arthur has done with precepts, but a little bit more detailed in terms of the observation side of the inductive method, and then it's also quite a bit more brisk than what precepts does. But it is meant to go through the whole Bible in 9 months. So that second school is called the School of Biblical Studies, and it's a 9-month school. Yeah, and then we have a program that actually gets those School of Biblical Studies graduates out overseas teaching the Word. So they've done their DTS or their initial school, and they've learned a lot of the basics of the faith, and then they've done the School of Biblical Studies, and they've grown up in attaching what their faith is to what the Scripture says. So for a lot of our young people, that School of Biblical Studies is the time where they own their faith as their own, not something that's been handed over to them or inherited from, say, their parents, but they really take a hold of it for themselves. But then afterwards, we have a program called the Titus Project, like I was alluding to a second ago, and that's a program that specifically teaches these young people to be able to share and teach the Bible in other cultures that they would need some extra instruction to know how to teach in. So we want to give them the tools to be able to give it away also. So that's a sort of a quick overview of the programs we have in Turner Valley. There are many more other than the discipleship training school, though, in YWAM. Oh, man.
Yeah. Well, oh, take a breath, man. Wow. Yeah. What a program you got going there. Lots going on. And it strikes me that if you're a young person just graduating from high school or going to do that soon, you might want to consider YWAM. I know some of our kids will think of Bible college, but another alternative before you go into your career is get grounded in the Word, take these courses, and then go see the world. Yeah. And then you have a different perspective when you enter into the careers that God is leading you to. And it's a great way of making that transition from your home high school experience to the world. And that's a critical moment in your lives. But then you might be at home, you're in the midst of COVID-19, and you can't do much, and you're thinking, what's next? Actually, if you're in the area, if you're in the Calgary area, going to Turner Valley and taking these schools now might be really advantageous, because I imagine there's a limit to travel overseas at this point. Yeah. So doing the course... That's true. So doing coursework now, if you're in the area, is great, so that you're ready and have that behind you before the travel starts opening up again. So you also have... I want to let the viewers know the relationship with Millerville Community Church, which is just a few miles down the road from Turner Valley. And we've had a close relationship with YWAM for many years, and we're proud supporters of many missionaries that are stationed and based and come out of Turner Valley. And we are privileged to have quite a few of your folks as part of our congregation, and have your children in our Sunday school and in a variety of ways. So we are a little biased towards YWAM out at Millerville. But, hey, you don't belong just to us. You belong to the world, and primarily to the Lord Jesus Christ and where he's leading you. So, hey, thanks, Andre. Thanks for letting us be a part of the mission that you guys are so involved in.
Well, and can I just say that we're so grateful for Millville Community Church's support. Like you said, it's been years, and it actually has been years. We're nearly going to move on to say decades. It's been a long going relationship, and it quite simply, YWAM Turner Valley. I don't know if they could function without the kind of mission mindedness of Millville Community Church. It's attached to a lot of the people we have here, but then also just the support of the whole ministry that we have. So I don't want to scurry past that. We are really just so grateful for our partnership with Millville Community Church.
Many of our members of our church watch this cast. They'll watch it later on YouTube or Facebook. And this is just a quick reminder from Andre that no matter what age you are, if you're feeling the call to missions, that door is still open. It is not closed.
That's right.
So I'm sure on everybody's mind is COVID-19, international travel. What is happening to missions now that the world seems to be on lockdown, Andre? What's going on?
Well, there's things that I'll say. I would say there's a lot of things that at the very forefront they look detrimental, and it's more than look detrimental. They are detrimental.
Yeah.
What we saw, at least in Youth of the Mission, when things changed drastically between that little window between the end of February and the beginning of April, was that a lot of missionaries were recalled off the field, and not many of them are missionaries that would say, no, we're going to stick this out, and they always are saying that. But when COVID happened, you start to realize when you're out there in some of these countries that there's a potential for a society to break down to the point where it will be very difficult to keep your survival together out there. And so there were a lot of missionaries that came off the field and came back home here. And so that was one of the first things that we'll say physically manifested out of COVID-19, was that we had missionaries that came off here. And I will say, speaking for some of the missionaries that I know, it's been challenging for them who were so busy while they were out there to sort of wait and then find some, we'll say, interim purpose in the meantime. Now, there have been a couple families I know that have done excellent because some of their work can be done remotely. But for us in particular, for YWAM Turner Valley and some of the overseas families that we're linked with, that was right away a huge concern. These families were coming home and looking for housing, and there was this step backwards. But when we look at YWAM in a broader sense, we're seeing, at least in YWAM, we're seeing God plant vision and faith during this time. I would say that the YWAMers have observed the walls that COVID has put up, but we do believe that 2020 is still meant to be a time when God is giving vision. And I'll say maybe there's a little bit more space for receptivity for some of these leaders and ministries, because things have come down in speed and maybe even come to a bit of a standstill, that ministries are able to take time and pray as a whole community and really seek the Lord. And I'll say maybe even process vision in a proper, healthy way, because COVID slowed things down. And so new ideas are coming out of that. Right now, we have a big buzz in YWAM. It's called a Global Prayer Initiative. And everybody is gathering together to pray and go deeper and ask the Lord for more vision and to send out more missionaries than ever, and that we can be more creative, use the internet more than ever. But God is birthing vision. I just think that there's just more creativity of the Spirit that's necessary to really step forward with the gospel. The gospel is going to keep going.
It is. And we had the Lonkeys on previously, and they were sharing their story, which is just one of the missionaries that's coming out of Turner Valley, and they were sharing their story. And what viewers may not know is that in a lot of cases, some of these families coming out of Turner Valley have their whole families go with their kids and so on, and they're over there on the mission field with the kids, and then COVID-19. And really, for some of them, some of their choices came down to, do I stay and risk my life and my children's life? And then when you say your children, well, gee, my first job is to protect my kids, and I have to do that.
Yeah.
So that, boy, I tell you, hard choices that you guys are facing, but I'm glad you're turning to God and praying, and we'll encourage our viewers to pray with YWAM about these big decisions. So it sounds like you have a sense that even though it took us by surprise, God is not surprised by COVID-19 or the reaction of the world to it.
No, I don't. God is. I really believe that. No, I'm not saying God caused COVID-19.
No.
Absolutely not.
No.
But in terms of the incredible redemptive hands of God, something like COVID-19 rolls out, and then you're amazed. I am amazed. We are amazed that God is still moving. He's still doing things. He's setting up for the future, new things for the future. And maybe some of those new things could not be set up without a proper restart. In YWAM, we had this word that go out about pruning, and so many of the YWAM ministries have looked closely at their own functioning and asked, have we been in cruise control in certain areas of our communities and our ministries where God is asking us actually to prune a branch or two, and so COVID hasn't been kind to anybody, but in terms of fitting in, I will say God has been redemptive on so many levels. And so, like, for example, for us in particular, for YWAM Turner Valley in particular, we felt like God was calling us back to really trying to bring in younger people than even we have now. So really looking at our 18 to 22-year-olds and asking God to bring us those people. But then as a whole community, we were able to get together and ask the Lord, seek Him, about how we can be more hospitable to new generations coming into our midst and want to get into missions, but they have new platforms of how they communicate, how they understand the world, and especially how they network. And so for us, it offered us a chance to come before the Lord and say, God, we want to champion young people like Youth Mission is called to do, but we need to go back. We need to take some steps backwards. Show us how to do that. And so I think that's just one example of how we have been blessed in the redemptive sense during COVID.
At Millerville, we've gone through the same thing, COVID-19, but this show, our evening vespers, a lot of the things we're doing, we're going online with Bible studies or sermon series, on and on and on. We've had to what they call pivot and innovate. And
right.
We kind of was on the drawing board to do this down the road a ways, but suddenly everything's been accelerated, just like with you guys. It seems like the Lord is giving us a sense of urgency to move in this direction more and more. This is a changing world, isn't it, Andre? It's just changing rapidly, and we're all curious about what's happening around the world and what is taking place. Part of the call to prayer you mentioned is the collapsing of societies. Canada has been fairly resilient during this time. We've weathered it fairly well with our healthcare system and so on, but a lot of these countries are fragile in the sense of infrastructures and other things that take place, and this is going to take a toll on a lot of people, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. Like even we had one family, coming off the field from Kathmandu, and, they told us that it got to a place where the lockdown there was so severe that it was very difficult to get food, and so earlier when you mentioned, some of these families had to make hard decisions.
Yeah.
A lot of these families weren't planning a furlough. It wasn't convenient, but when you're facing a situation where that day, you're number one, no vehicles are allowed on the road, so you have to get to where you're going without a vehicle, and you have to get food for your family. And if you're caught on the street, you could be caned by a police officer.
Oh.
That was the reality of one of our families, of being chased by a police officer with a cane. In that very city, I had a report from another ministry leader that the when COVID hit and the lockdown hit in particular in Kathmandu, that you had so many suicides that were happening throughout the city.
Oh.
Just because all of the services become extremely limited. Some people cannot hold on, whether it's for hope or even for physical survival, that you have a suicide rate. I'm not sure if it's for Kathmandu or Nepal, but we have in the thousands there. The number that I was given by a ministry leader, an on-the-ground ministry leader in Kathmandu. So this is, you're right to say that we have a bit of an insulated situation in Canada, because some other countries that have more severe lockdowns, they also, the pain of that lockdown is also incredible. That's on top of what COVID is doing in terms of the devastation. So yeah, no, it's intense in some of these other countries as well.
I'm glad you're sharing that with us, because we tend to watch our TV screens for the numbers in our country and distracted by other issues, but it's pretty serious around the world. Even if they haven't contracted COVID-19, there's still life and death scenarios playing out over there.
Oh, yeah.
So even though a
That's
missionary might be on furlough and back home, that doesn't mean the mission has stopped.
That's right. Yeah, that's
Hallelujah.
right. Yeah.
I know from talking with some of the missionaries that are back home now that they have teams that are on the ground over there that are still working, and they're staying in contact with them and working together. So supporting and upholding missionaries that we send out from here is still important. Even though they may be here, they're still working and they're still in contact with their mission teams overseas, helping them out and the best that they can, given the limitations we have been given. Wow.
Yeah, and I know from even on what you're saying about the teams that some of these missionaries have left. We have the two families that have left business teams back in where they're from, and they're in a place where you're personally now living in Canada on the funds that you have to before live in an Asian country, but now you're back at home, but you have to also personally with your money fund the people that are working in your business, even though your business isn't fully functioning, and making the money to take care of those workers. And so the financial burden for some of those families is double. It's double, yeah.
So financial support to help these countries that are going through great turmoil. If you want to be involved in that, on the ground boots, directly involved, Turner Valley and missionaries through YWAM are doing that work, even though they may be home. The flow of those resources and the directing of those resources so they're effective and arriving on time in place where they need to be are happening. So your support is now more important than ever if you're considering that for Turner Valley YWAM. If people wanted to support Turner Valley YWAM, how would they go about doing this, Andre?
Well, there's a few ways. If you have somebody in particular that is a missionary that you're in relationship with, and you would like to support someone in particular, you can. If you would like to get a hold of me, of our ministry, I can give you the information of how to send your funds to. It's called project funding, and so it's the funding agency that funds or takes the funds in for all the YWAM missionaries in Canada, and I can give you the contact information for them. They would receipt you at the end of the year. Now, if you would like to support Youth and Mission Turner Valley as a whole, that you can actually bring straight to me, or I can you can get in contact with me, and I can actually pick up any kind of funds from you directly, and YWAM Turner Valley would receipt you at the end of the year as well. So we would be very grateful for that, but not at all expecting that. Thank you for even the pitch, John.
Well, hey, it's important. It's lives are on the line, and you guys are making a difference. And this is a channel that people might not be aware of, that more help can be brought. And there are some people who are listening to this who are able to do that, maybe called of the Lord to do that. And we certainly would want that to happen. So they remember, when you give to YWAM Turner Valley, there's the school, Turner Valley YWAM. And then there's several missionary families that use that as home base and are going out, and you can also contribute to them. And you can also contact Millerville Community Church. We have put several of these missionary families into our regular yearly budget, and they're just there, and we give to that. And your contributions to Millerville Community Church also goes to that. In fact, when I arrived at Millerville, I was surprised at the percentage of the giving to missions. There's a lot that this church gives out.
Amazing, yeah.
Well, it's one of the reasons I said, yeah, I want to be a part of that. So that's very good.
Wow.
Yeah, I know that I was the other day on the show, we were talking about money, but one of the things that we have observed over the years is that when you give to missions and to the mission of the church, God has a tendency to bless your life in other ways as you give into the kingdom of God. So that it's great to be in partnership with organizations like yourself. And we have other missionary organizations we also partner with in Millerville. So there you have it. The beauty of that, so you said to get in contact with you. I don't want to lose that. So you have a web page that they could go to, check you out, get more information, your contact. What's your web page? What's the address?
It's ywamturnervalley.org. Yeah, so it's just www.ywamturnervalley.org. And it's really easy to navigate in terms of getting to a donate page. And there's a few options once you get there also. So there should be the option that you prefer, whether it's e-transfer or whether it's a check or that sort of thing. But right when you get to the website, on the very top bar, there should be, it should say give in the right-hand side. And there you can click on that, and there should be about five different options of how to give, and then explanations there.
Yeah.
And in terms of giving to an individual, I can give you, John, the contact information of that project funding office that receives funds for individuals, if you'd like. Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah, I can do that.
We've got our own missions coordinator right here at Millerville. You can also contact her church office, and they can get you all the information you might need at Millerville Community Church and at our website at millervillechurch.org. So those are good contacts, way to get a hold of Turner Valley YWAM. Turner Valley YWAM, if you're curious, if you come to Turner Valley, there's like one intersection, and near it is the famous restaurant that everybody goes to, the Chuck Wagon. And rather than keep, if you go south at that intersection, which a lot of people don't, that road takes you to it dead ends, basically, at your campus. And you're down on the river.
That's
it's
right.
a beautiful spot. And an old historical spot, because my understanding is that was one of the original hospitals in Turner Valley that was established there and was that for years. And you guys took it over and have been going through an ongoing renovation of the place. And it's really great. I imagine you don't want a lot of guests during COVID down at the campus at this time, coming to check you out.
That's it really does feel like the strangest thing to say, but unfortunately, we've because of how we're like, come to the campus and we'll send you out, but then actually right now we're actually trying to limit the amount of people from outside of our cohorts that we have here. We're trying to limit that, and then it is surprising, but we are still running a DTS school, so we have accepted students into our DTS school but that's a slow period. And we actually have 2 students that are quarantining for 14 days at this moment, who are getting ready to start that School of Biblical Studies in a couple weeks as well. So we are trying to limit some of the traffic in. It feels terrible to say that. It's just so not who we are. But it is what we have to do to play a team game against COVID. Yeah,
it's a reality. So we got to deal with that. But want the viewers to know they can check you out online and have an idea where that campus is, and maybe someday they can sort of drive up to your gate. I've been noticing, Andre, that people are escaping the city and driving that Highway 22.
Oh,
and they're on the weekend, there's a lot of traffic going through Turner Valley.
Oh yeah.
And it's like a major, wow.
Oh, I mean, even down to our campus here, and these are not people who are necessarily coming to our campus, or not. They don't know that the road ends at our campus, but on a Saturday, we'll have 30 or 40 vehicles that'll just drive through, and you can see on their faces that they have this wandering look, eh? And so we usually stop. They say, "Oh, I'm looking for this highway or that highway." "Oh yeah, you go this way, you go that way." And who knows? Maybe their eternal direction can be altered at that moment too. So.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, hey, if you didn't know it, you're at the gates of YWAM Turner Valley, and someday you might be able to drop in and get a tour, and maybe even Andre will help you out.
Oh, I'd love to.
So that's a quick introduction to YWAM. I just kind of want to touch with you a question I have in mind on the big picture, the state of missions today around the world. I've made an argument, and some people are confused by it, but I argue we're sort of in a golden age of the church, and especially in missions and outreach around the world. It's I was thinking, Peter and Paul and Hudson and other great missionaries of the past would have loved to be here at this time in history.
Yeah.
Do you agree with that?
Yeah.
Why do you agree with that?
I agree with it. At the same time, I think that the challenge of missions in some of our Western countries, especially in Canada, I think the challenge is extremely great in these countries. I do feel like the golden age you're talking about is really evident in the developing church around the world. You have a Christian population that's growing fast in countries like China. Brazil is experiencing what some church leaders they're not calling it revival, but they're calling it something that's growing in that direction. Just before COVID went wild in Brazil, there was a conference I know that brought together numerous ministries. So YWAM was involved in it, but there were ministries from the States and many ministries from Latin America that came together for might have been a 13. It was a long event, and it was just focused on sending people overseas. So it was called the Send, and so you had all these people that were coming to these stadiums or stadium, I should say, and they're just people that are hungry to follow the Lord. And then not long after, they decided, well, we need to follow this up with something online, because COVID by that time had shut things down as far as meeting in stadiums. And so they held an online kind of get together, and I think there was between 2 and 3 million people that were online at the Send, this online Send. And you had an event that was online for over 11 to 13 hours of online streaming of different church leaders. They would all just speak maybe for 10 or 15 minutes, and then maybe you'd have Bethel do the worship for another 20 minutes, and then another worship team from Brasilia do a worship set. And so when you're talking in numbers like 2 to 3 million people, with 35 million people in Canada, and then you say 2 to 3 million people meeting and wanting to be sent out to the nations. Mm-hmm. We don't hear about those sort of things that are happening, and that's just Brazil, right? That's just Brazil. So there's amazing things happening in China, and so there's the golden age you're talking about, I believe, is evident, but maybe we don't see it in these Western countries and in Canada, where I feel, the obstacles to sharing the gospel are far more hidden and covert, but they're far more controlling of Christians' behavior or their resistance to sharing the gospel. So,
but
yeah.
That's kind of, we're in a great struggle where there has always been opposition to the spreading of the gospel of Jesus Christ, and that's been true from day one. But it seems that opposition is fairly coordinated, and ever since the year 2000, the church has been moving into areas that were shut to us, and we've penetrated and even in countries where it's illegal to share the gospel is spreading and people are coming to faith in Jesus Christ. And that's been happening quite strongly around the world. And frankly, that's the reason why we can't talk about this golden age a lot of times, because there are people underground, covert, and we can't talk about what they're doing because they could be in trouble if we do that.
Exactly. Yeah.
So it's a golden age, but it's not really shiny. We don't want a lot of people paying attention to that, and but then it's quite obvious that we live in a world where persecution is at an all-time high of Christian groups around the world.
Yeah.
And
we have a joke we crack here where when we're overseas in a country like, say, Myanmar, and we under the right conditions we can share our faith there, but we say we need to share our faith with you because your great grandchildren need to come to our country of Canada to re-Christianize it. So we and it's just a joke, but there's some seriousness about. I'll say the beauty of some of the faith that we see overseas, and how there's a fire, a New Testament fire in it, and when we go over there, we can really learn from a lot of the ministers that we meet there about resilience and endurance. And sharing the gospel and standing in your faith regularly, and meeting together with the believers that you have around you, and being faithful to that, we can really learn from them.
So part of experiencing that overseas, getting involved with YWAM for a year or two, going overseas and coming back, having said, hey, I was there, I was part of that remarkable time in history and the spread and the mission of the church. You bring that back home when you come back home and get a job here in North America. That stays with you the rest of your life, and you're connected with that, and that's part of the change that occurs here. So YWAM can accomplish both things, right? It can you can be a part of what's going on over there, but also a change of what's happening back here in North America.
On that, go ahead.
So I got a theory, but I'll share my theory after you make your comment.
Well, I mean, on that point about like partnerships and going out into missions, and maybe somebody who's 18 or 19, they do a discipleship training school, and man, we hope to win them over to a life of missions. But maybe God has called them to work in the workforce here and to be the salt and light here. It doesn't necessarily mean, though, that they need be separate from what God is doing in a holistic sense. They can be partnered with something like a YWAM Turner Valley or another missions organization. I know that Millville Community Church is connected closely with Teen Challenge. It's not that one has to say, I'm going to do my discipleship training school, and then that's it for any connection with missions. We want to partner with people who are not in, say, Youth of the Mission Turner Valley proper. We want to have partnerships and relationships with people who are outside of us. And I believe that missions has to grow, especially the missions organizations like ours that are on the ground here, but sending people out there. We have to grow in the creativity of those partnerships. Like, for example, we have We have projects on our campus here that are specialized and beyond a 22-year-old facilities manager. We have asbestos that needs to be removed in this room. We want to build a gate in front of the property, and we don't have the mason work or the rock work we don't have somebody who can do that. But there can be partnerships. Someone who says, "Oh, I actually do that for a living. I know how to do that. I can help you out with that, or give you some direction." Those sort of partnerships, they can sort of, I'll say, lessen the gap between being outside of missions and being directly a partner with what God's doing in missions.
So it's not always about money. It's about a skill that you might have, right, or an ability or knowledge, yep, that you might possess. Everything from being a mason, removing hazardous material, or a techie that can work on high-speed internet and all that kind of stuff. So there are many ways to be involved in it. You know, I'm a pastor here in North America, right out here near Calgary. It recently returned to Canada from the United States, where I've been for over 20 years. But I grew up in this area and know this area very well. And it's good to be back home. But as a minister that's been around in North America for a long time now, I've seen the gradual decline. But I do think it's part of the strategy. So if you look at it, here's my theory, Andre, is that the enemy was aware that back in 2000 that the church in the West made a concerted financial and personal effort to penetrate regions that did not know the gospel and had not heard it, and has made great progress. So he realized that if he doesn't hinder the West and the church there, this goes on, and he's right. So we did something right, and we've got a lot of backlash as a result of that. So the church has been in a cultural war here for many years now, and has had a very negative presentation of the church, of the gospel, of the Bible, of Christ himself, right here in North America. Right. I've been watching the media closely, and I see that right now aliens get better press than the gospel of Jesus Christ. So what does that tell you? I mean, who would have thought of that 20 years ago? So it's coordinated. It's not happen chance that this is taking place.
Well, and some of that coordination, it results in, I'll say, a general feeling of expected shame if you're going to share your faith. So, and this could be one of the biggest persecutors. We might not have somebody throw you in a cell yet and beat you up, but if you share your faith, you can expect that we'll say everything from what Canadian media has done to some of the legislation that even our government has put out. But if you sort of summate or bring that together and do the math on what that creates for a person who's about to share their faith, you can expect that you are going to be shamed when you share your faith. But having said that, it may be that moment also for somebody who hears the presentation of the gospel and says, this is my moment for something new, that my existence has led up to this. But you can expect otherwise that there's shame, that you'll get a snicker. Maybe someone will say, do people still believe that stuff? Or like you said, I'd rather believe in UFOs. But that's a part of the persecution, that unseen persecution that Christians have in the West here and in Canada, that if we don't say this exists, then it will control us without us even knowing it. We won't share the gospel and we won't know why, but we have to face the actual persecutors that are out there that are a little bit more unseen than in other places.
And it's very visible, and it's very real too, because 25 years ago, Billy Graham Association, if they showed up, Billy Graham was in Time magazine, a prophet with honor, highly praised, widely accepted.
Right. Yeah.
Now, if they show up in England, they can't find a building to hold a crusade in. They're just being shut out and say, no, we don't want anything to do with you. So that's happened within a 20-year period that change has occurred. So that's
remarkable.
Yeah. So things have changed. But what we see in the media, what we see in political pressures and government and so on against the church, I just want to remind people, does not represent where people really are at, that the majority may not be in line with what the media or the government says to us. So we just don't always have a voice, and we've relied on the government and media to represent us. But there can come a time, and I think we're in it, when the government and the media does not always represent the majority out there and what they feel and they think. I say that because as a pastor, I deal with people all the time on the street, just your average Canadian in this area, and they're not against the church, and they don't hold to the party line. So it's really interesting to see the disconnect that is happening around the world. I say all that to highlight this point is it is hard to get a bearing on what's really going on around us in this world. I don't know if you've noticed that. That's an important part of the missions that we do is where are we really at? And you can't go by media. You can't go by, internet reports and so on. But a discerning spirit is now needed more than ever. One of the reasons I wanted you on, Andre, is to help people to get a better handle of what's really going on in this world, because we're not getting it in many other places. So, I'm thankful for your perspective and your work and your ministry and what you're doing out there, and we're just so glad that your folks are safe, and most of them are back home, I believe, by now, and doing the work of the Lord. So do remember Turner Valley in your prayers. Remember these countries that they are ministering in even now around the world in your prayers as well. Remember Turner Valley School itself for YWAM, for its development and its students and its continued survival. And if you feel led by the Lord to donate to that, you can do that directly with YWAM Turner Valley or through Millerville Community Church. And then you may feel a tug and you want to talk to Andre about missions, and he's right here and willing to talk with you as well. Are there any other needs or other things that you want us to know about, Andre, before we wrap up our show today?
You know what? I'd love to throw out one more thing, just so you're aware of it. And this is something that we're growing in. But we've launched out into something called Faith Journey, and so this is just a position of how we feel God is leading us to seek Him for provision and sort of the sustenance of how this ministry survives. And so maybe for many YWAM ministries in the world, the way that a YWAM campus or ministry or community survives is by the fees that the students pay. They come in and they pay a fee for their school, and that fee covers the electricity and the insurance and the food on the table and that sort of stuff. About quite a few years ago, we felt like the Lord was leading us to try something a bit different. And instead of charging our students a fee, involve them directly in seeing the needs of this ministry and believing with us for God to supernaturally provide it, and sort of come alongside of us so that their discipleship included looking to God and trusting Him, not just for finances, but for healing and for fruit in sharing the gospel, and especially for starting ministries overseas in unreached places. But we felt that in withdrawing this fee from the package of discipleship that people enter into when they come here, and taking that out of it, that they have a chance to grow in a kind of faith that we will get to see those young people starting ministries that are really kingdom-based, really faith-based, really looking to God for supernatural gains for the kingdom overseas. And it starts at the very beginning of how they feel the needs here, how they see God provide for the needs here. And so we've called that, as I say, faith journey, because it's a new thing for us. It's relatively new in Youth with a Mission, and we're learning a ton. But we are really excited about how that's a part of the discipleship package. So I say all that so that the people of Millville Community Church and others who are watching can keep us in your prayers, specifically that God would give us the faith to walk this journey, and that it would not be limited to provision, but that the faith gained in provision would reach over and inspire pioneering new ministries and sharing our faith supernaturally, and really seeking to live the life that it would seem like Acts, the book of Acts, shows us to. So we need your prayers very much. I'm asking for that you guys would pray for us, that we would have the faith to walk forward in this.
Amen. We on my show yesterday, I was talking about money and the need to rely on the Lord and for His providence in our life. No matter where you are or who you are, it's should be a standard in every Christian life, and a way of doing that is to give with a generous heart as your expression of your confidence in the Lord's providence, because all we have received comes from Him in the first place. And I can't think of a time where COVID-19 and the shutdown response, the economic hardship, we're all coming to the reality, hey, we all have to live like this. We got to walk by faith and not by sight. We need to rely on the Lord and His providence during difficult times, for health, for finances. You know, there are a lot of people who've had investments in the stock market, relying on that for their pension, and they're watching it being slashed by half. You know.
Tough.
Yeah.
Tough. Yeah.
So faith is something that the Lord is bringing home, not to only in the mission field, and to those looking to do that. We all need to get into that same kind of faith walk. God can provide. I really believe that. God can provide. And I don't think it's a bad thing to rely on the Lord and to call out to Him. That's a good thing. So, good skill set. Way to go, Andre. Hey, thank you, brother. We're praying for you. We're with you all the way. I'm so glad for our partnership with Millerville. Millerville's blessed because of it, and we're thrilled to be a part of that as well. And we hope we can continue to be a blessing to you folks there. You are constantly in our prayers as we intercede for you and the work that the Lord is doing through you. And God bless you, brother. Keep up the good work. Okay?
Hey, thank you so much. And thank you, Millerville. Thank you so much.
Hallelujah. There he goes. That's Andre. He's off and going to have a busy day, I'm sure, continuing to work. If you want to go check out their website, check out our website and get connected to that. Maybe go to Turner Valley, get accidentally lost at the end of that road going south of the intersection, and just be aware that they're out there. And you too can be involved. You give them a call. See what the Lord is asking you to do. This is an outlet, a real boots-on-the-ground way of helping people overseas to survive during this time. And I just wanted you to be aware of that and the work that is going on. Well, this has been Pastor John from Millerville Community Church, and this has been Coffee with Pastor John, part of the MCC Briefing Series on YouTube live and rebroadcast on Facebook, on our Facebook page at MCC Briefing. God bless you all and keep you until next time. We're encouraging you to keep the faith and to share it too.